Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jose. If you guys didn't get a chance to check out my last video, I did a breakdown of the workflow between the Sony A7S III and Panasonic GH5 where I color converted the footage out of that camera using Emotive Colors color conversion LUTs to get it to really look like Arri Alexa footage. So I did a more of a condensed workflow. This video is going to be more of a wider, broader breakdown of how to apply all of those conversion LUTs in Premiere Pro to the Sony A7S III ProRes Raw footage. Before we dive into the main color correction in Adobe Premiere Pro, just going to take you guys through the documentation and things that you'll see when you download your LUTs from Emotive Colors. So you have your Sony A7S III folder, and then you have two subfolders. This very bottom, Supplement Waveforms folder, you'll notice a waveform guide. Now we're going to go into our Emotive Color main files. They have a text documentation with, that's registered to you. We're going to dive into our A7S Alex folder. So we have three folders along with the PDF. We have our color conversions, images, and supporting files. We'll dive into the PDF in a bit here, but just going to go through the supporting files. So you'll see you have an auto black level labeled post. This is one of the last steps that you'll be doing when color correcting your image. You have your exposure conversions. This is labeled pre. This is one of the first steps that you'll be using to color correct your image and really dial in the exposure. They also have power grades for DaVinci Resolve. We're not going to be using any of these. We're going to be doing everything, as I said, in Premiere Pro. So we have some picture profile converters here. So you have our S-log2, S-gamut, and then you also have PP9, so S-log3, S-gamut3. We did not shoot in that picture profile, but S-log3, S-gamut3 cine. This is the converter we're going to be using for our ProRes Raw footage. So I'm going to take you guys through the timeline here, basically, show you guys the layout of Adobe Premiere and how I work and edit this footage. So at the top, you'll notice these different tabs, starting with the learning, assembly, editing, color, effects, all the way down to audio, graphics, and captions. So right now we're currently in the editing tab. You'll notice from the three clips here, you'll notice the clips updating in the effects control panel here on the upper left side. So here we have our position, scale, rotation, attributes, and to the left of the effects and control windows, you'll notice this source tab here. So if you click in the source tab, you'll have your ProRes Raw source settings. So you have this exposure slider along with the color space drop down menu here. So now in this color space, you'll notice this BT Rec 709 preview. If you scroll down, you'll notice you have HLG, C-log2, D-log, N-log, all the way down to V-log. And then on the bottom you have so we're going to use this S-gamut3 cine S-log color space at the very bottom here. So you'll notice it changes our color space. So our video will update to a flat picture profile. Just going to go through down to that very bottom S-log option for each clip here. Each clip has different lighting conditions. We're using all natural lighting for these clips. We're now in the editing tab. We're going to go over to our color tab. I'm just going to show you guys the Lumetri Color section on the right side here. So now over in Lumetri, at the very top, you'll notice these three vertical bars stacked over each other. So this is where we can export a look, we can save a preset, we can auto refresh. You have your essential graphics on the side here. We're not going to be using that. So now you can see that we can dial in our source clip here in the preview window on the left hand side here. We can go back, select our effects controls. That'll take us to our Adobe Raw settings, and then we also have our Lumetri scopes. Lumetri scopes, we have our waveform along with our vector scope. Premiere Pro's waveform scope scale, it ranges from 0 all the way up to 120, and that's based off of the Arri scale. So Arri stands for the Institute of Radio Engineers, I believe. You'll notice a waveform guide here. They have a couple different markers here, some reference points from Sicario. It's a great film. They had an amazing cinematographer Roger Deakins. It's really cool that they provide these markers and these reference points to really dial in your skin tones, both in sunny situations, indoor lit situations, and also making sure that your black levels are where they need to be, along with your highlights and things like that. So a couple notes from the waveform scale. The skin tones should fall within 450 to 680 on the Adobe Premiere Pro waveform scale. It's going to fall between 45 to, I want to say, 60 on the IRE scale. Over on the Lumetri Color tab, you can see this effects option. You have this Lumetri drop-down section. You have the option to add a Lumetri color effect, which we're going to be doing here in a second. Now going back to our effects and presets, going to go back into our video attribute options. So you see we just applied a Lumetri color here. So we're going to go back into the drop-down menu, the Lumetri color. We're going to rename this to pre and white balance. Now this is going to be key. We're going to be adding a second instance of Lumetri color. And in the basic correction options, you can see that we have some pre-installed, Alexa defaults that we can use all the way ranging down to Phantom. But we're going to browse in a second here and apply our own pre-converter provided by Emotive Color. Going down, you have the exposure and contrast sliders here. You also have highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks for your basic color correction. Now clicking on this creative drop-down box, in the look drop-down option, you have a wide range of pre-installed looks, pre-installed LUTs. Again, we're going to be browsing and we're going to be applying a couple of different instances of Emotive Color conversion LUTs. Clicking on the curves, you also have your RGB curves. We're not going to be using the curves for this color correction procedure. We're going to be using our color wheels here to dial in our shadows, our midtones, and highlights to add the finishing touches and finishing tweaks to our color correction and color grading procedure. So going to go back to the basic correction tab, going to browse, and we're going to navigate to our LUTs. I have my Arri LUT. We're not going to be using that right now. We're going to be using our Sony A7SIII Emotive Color LUT support. We're going to dive into our supporting files and going into our PP8 S-Gamut Cine. So you'll see the pre-converter for Adobe Premiere Pro. We're going to go ahead and load that in. I'm going to check my Lumetri scopes here, and you'll notice how that vector scope pretty much changed. So as you can see, currently we have our skin tones on that skin tone line. So here we're just going to make sure to white balance our scene here. So we got a couple different things, a couple different sections on our set here that we can use to dial in our white balance. So we're going to use this eyedropper for the white balance selector. I just clicked on the sort of like white balcony section. You'll see that our white balance updated. We have a much warmer tone on our temperature and tint scale. So I'm just going to take the eyedropper and click this little detail on the pillow here. You'll see how that updated too. And our skin tones, as I was saying, is on the skin tone line here on the vector scope. So between the yellow and red channels, that's looking correct. We're a little bit warmer on the temperature and tint as well. So now we're going to dive into our creative tab. We're going to click that look drop down, and again we're going to browse. Diving back into our supporting files, we're going to go into our exposure conversions in that pre section. So here you can see we have a wide range of pre-converters to really dial in our exposure. So the exposure conversion allows accurate adjustment of exposure in post before applying the conversion. These are much better than software exposure sliders or ISO adjustments. This ensures complete accuracy of the conversion with clipping compensation included. When using in tandem with conversion, they allow complete flexibility, so between -2 and +2 and 1/3 stop increments. So they have -1 stops here, all the way down to +1 and +2. So we're going to use this +3 stops just to dial it in just slightly. You'll see how that waveform Scope updated, so the scene got a little bit brighter. So again, using that creative tab, we're going to go back into our fixed control panel. We're going to add that second instance of Lumetri Color. So again, you can toggle between this effects tab here to the left, and you'll see, how that Lumetri Color is working. So adding that second instance of Lumetri Color, we're going to rename that. I'm going to call this Convert plus Post. Click OK. And now we're going to go back and check our scopes so we can see how this converter updates our image. So we're going to go to Input LUT, that drop down, and we're going to browse again. And we're going to search for our main converter. It's in our color conversions file. So we're going to go into this 65 times folder. These main color converters range from the very top based off of the 4200 Kelvin scale, and that's just an average of the tungsten and daylight color scales. So the conversions use two different resolution formats, 65 by 65 by 65 and 33 by 33 by 33. These resolutions affect the density of color gradient information stored in the conversion. 33 times has a much smaller file size, which is widely compatible. 65 times, as the name states, is able to capture subtle nuances in color transitions, especially when converting from a log format. 65 times has 8 times the density or resolution of 33 times. So they have two display variations ready for color conversions. They have theatrical and high scale. So for example, white internet pages and commercial content, I find that it, like the name states, it's a lot brighter. I find it pleasing to my eye. We're going to choose this daylight high scale 65 times option. You really see how that image is converted. So our waveform updated. We have a much broader scale here. Our vector scope updated as well. We're going to dive into our creative look menu drop down, and we're going to go into our supporting files and then dial in our auto black level. So we have level 1 all the way down to 4. We're going to select 1, click open, and you see our shadows just updated slightly. So they're slightly crushed, just judging by this image. We're going to scroll down, and you really see the skin tones and how those pop on the image. So we're going to go down to our color wheels, again looking at the waveform scope, just raising the shadows just slightly. We don't want those crushed too much. And again, this is judging based off the reference image or the reference scopes that Emotive Color provided. So we want our skin tones within that 40 to 50 IRE range. We're going to zoom in just slightly, and you can see from the image, so just zooming in to a section of the skin, you can really see that our main skin tones are within that 40 to 50 IRE. So again, zooming out and just scrubbing through the image. We have a couple hot spots here in the background that we should probably pay attention to and address. The roll off on the face and on the highlights there is not too hot, but we're going to take those main highlights in the background and we're going to dial those down using our color wheels. So I'm not too concerned about how that is looking like right now. Obviously the main skin tones look correct. This image is slightly grainy. I shot at a high ISO, but just playing this image back, you can really see the waveform here and how our skin tones and our shadows are dialed in where they need to be. Skin tones are looking accurate. Everything's looking good on that vector scope. Same with the waveform scope here. So just scrubbing back, we took care of those highlights and the image is looking pretty pleasing. So we have our two instances of Lumetri Color. We plugged in a couple converters in post here. We have our black color converter and our pre-converter steps, you know, in the creative tab, you know, we dialed in those exposure converters, and then on the main input LUT, we have our S-log3 converter. We made sure to white balance before even applying our conversion or post instance of Lumetri Color. So now just move along to this second shot here. So we're going to do a slightly different workflow. So I'm going to again be using Lumetri Color to add an instance here. We're going to rename this. Again, pre plus post. Once we have that, we're going to go into our basic correction and put LUT dropdown. Selecting my scopes. We're going to browse and we're going to select our PP8 S-log3 pre-converter. Making sure to load that in. And then now we're going to go into our creative tab. In that look drop down section, we're going to browse. And again, this image is a little underexposed, so I'm just going to try this 0.6 stop option, slightly brighten the image. You can see our waveform scope here. Now we're going to go through and apply that second instance of Lumetri Color. Again, going to rename that. I'm going to rename this one slightly different. We're going to try the log-C converter along with our post-production black level converter. So in the input LUT dropdown, we're going to make sure to browse. We're going to go into our main color conversions here. And we're going to select this daylight log-C. So they have two display variations ready for color conversions. They have theatrical and high scale. And one data format variation log-C, which is included. Like I said, that preps your footage for the Arri Rec. 709 converter LUT. Okay, so I provided a link to a LUT generator provided by Arri on their website. So I have the link in the description if you guys care to check that out. Once you visit the site, it'll take you to this page here. If you scroll down, you'll see this LUT generator section. For the source format here, we want to select log-C, S-gamut, and then the destination format, I have it set to video. Conversion parameter, we want that Arri Rec. 709, color space, and then the LUT information, it's a 3D LUT. We're not going to enable this HDR video color space or anything like that. We're just going to click the drop-down file type to Adobe. And then you can have the option to send a download link. I'm just going to click generate LUT files here. You click that, it'll open another window, and then you'll see the .cube file in your downloads. So I already have it downloaded and extracted. I'll show you guys in a second the workflow for incorporating this with a log-C converter from Emotive Color to apply this, like I said, log-C to Rec. 709 Arri LUT to the image. So we're going to go into the 65 times folder. We're going to again select that GHALEX Daylight log-C converter. You'll see how that image converted. We're going to apply a LUT from Arri. It's their C-log to Rec. 709 LUT. .cube file. We're going to load that in, and you see how that image changes. So this image is a little bright. Again, the background window is, you know, a little overexposed. And our shadows are right where they need to be. So we're going to go in and address those highlights for the background. So just dropping those. And I think I might as well just lower the blacks just slightly. So lowering the midtones, making sure that our skin tones are falling in the range that they need to be. Just going to play this clip back. And this is looking fairly accurate. So now I'm just going to go in and select this last clip. So we have this sit-down interview that I filmed. We had some nice even lighting on her face and nothing really too blown out in the background. So I'm going to add an instance of Lumetri Color, just going to work a little bit faster for this clip. We're going to rename this Pre plus White Balance. And we're going to go through now into our basic correction input LUT. We're going to browse, diving into our support files. Again, using this S-log3 pre-converter, making sure we're using the Premiere Pro version. They also provide a version for Final Cut. And then we're going to white balance here. And then going into our Creative tab, we're going to browse, diving in back into our A7S3 supporting files. We're going to dial in our exposure, conversion. So I'm just going to try one stop. So that really, brightened the image. So we're going to add a second instance of Lumetri Color. And again, you guys know the routine. We're going to convert and add our post-production LUTs. So we're going to browse in the input LUT dropdown. So this time we're going to try the 33 times high scale GHALEX Daylight LUT. We're going to open that. We're going to load that in. So you'll see how that waveform scope really updated. So again, into our creative drop down menu, we're going to select auto black level 1. So this image is looking decently exposed. So as I mentioned, we have some even lighting on her skin tones. It's looking a little bit bright, so I'm going to go through into our Creative tab. Actually, no. I'm going to go into our pre-converter. I'm going to browse and use slightly less exposure correction. We're going to use that 0.6 stops, and you can see how our skin tones are falling within the range that they really need to be. So basing it off the waveform scope, our skin tones are looking good. We're going to go into our conversion and post color wheels, and we're going to dial in and really lower those highlights in the background. Make sure that we have nothing clipping. And this image is looking evenly exposed. We're going to dial in our shadows as well, not too much. I'm just going to play this clip back. So the lighting is, looking fairly even. Again, everything's falling within the range that it needs to be. And this, sit-down interview was shot at the correct ISO. I believe it was shot at either ISO 640 or 800. It wasn't as grainy as, this very first clip. So this is basically what you'll see. So we have, all of our footage. We're going to load in actually a different scene here that had some more tungsten lighting. So it was actually a mixed lighting condition. We shot in a bedroom scene here. We shot a scene here with a model waking up from bed. You can see that we have this bed lamp in the background here. Had more of a tungsten white balance. So I'm going to select our clip here, going to load it into our timeline. Just going to lower the speed a little bit. And making sure to, convert that to our S-log3. And again, we're going to go through, add an instance of Lumetri Color. We actually don't want to add that here. We want to go back into our main source clip in our effects controls, and this is where we're going to add the Lumetri Color instance. So again, we're going to rename this pre plus white balance. So here we're going to select, in our basic corrections, we're going to select our Sony S-log3 pre-converter. Again, nothing really major is happening. Now we're going to go into our creative tab, and we're going to dial in our exposure here. So I'm going to use 0.6 stops. It's looking good for now. Adding that second instance of Lumetri Color, going to rename this Conversion plus Post. And now in this Input LUT dropdown, we're going to, instead of selecting our daylight, we're going to select this tungsten high scale, and maybe even try out the average 4200 Kelvin option. So we see how this image really changes. The skin tones are looking fairly accurate on the vector scope. But let's try the 4200 Kelvin option I just mentioned. So we're going to select high scale, we're going to dial that in. So I think that looks much better in terms of skin tones. Now in our creative look drop-down option, we're going to browse, and we're going to dial in our auto black levels. So I think that's looking fairly good. Just going to play this clip back. I think the skin tones are falling, like I said, where they need to be. That's what I'm mainly focusing on and paying attention to. Nothing's overexposed. Our shadows aren't crushed. You know, you have some hot spots there, but that's mainly from that lamp in the background, so we're going to lower that just slightly. It's not really affecting our skin tones too much. Again, you know, those are falling generally in the range that they need to be on this, you know, waveform scope. And I think it's looking fairly good. So this is what the final results look like. I think given the, you know, the mixed lighting situations, and, you know, we had to dial up the ISO a little bit on this shoot, you know, just using all natural lighting. The sit-down interview was properly exposed, so I think that footage really took well to the color conversion LUTs. But overall, I think I'm pretty pleased with the results. So you guys have a basic knowledge now of, you know, how to work with the ProRes Raw footage. I would recommend checking out my previous videos with that breakdown of the Sony A7S III and Panasonic GH5 workflows. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys gained a better knowledge of, you know, the post-production color correction workflow using ProRes Raw and these Emotive Color LUTs. So if you haven't already so, please like and subscribe, hit that bell. And if you already have, my name is Jose. I have been your One Orbit Captain, and we'll see you guys in the next one.